The Great Depression forced people to eat the worst meals one could ever think of, from snapping turtle soup to onions stuffed with peanut butter. These are 10 meals people had to eat during the Great Depression. Starting at number 10 is corned beef luncheon salad. Corned beef luncheon salad was basically a combination of canned corn and peas and a can of corned beef. After mixing these three, people added plain gelatin, lemon juice, and vinegar. The mixture was eventually poured into a mold and placed in the refrigerator. When it came out, it appeared like jelly, something most modern eaters would not find particularly appetizing. Corned beef luncheon salad may not have been the tastiest, most succulent thing to eat, but at least it filled the belly and was healthy enough to supply necessary body nutrients. Today, the food is extinct from dinner tables. Food trends and standards have changed, and people have developed a new taste beyond corned beef luncheon salad. And yeah, let's not forget that we're no longer in the Great Depression era, and with new eras come new foods. But the creativity of this era didn't end with corned beef salad. It also extended to the next food on the list: popcorn with milk. Number 9. Popcorn with milk. Now, this definitely sounds strange to anybody in the 21st century. The idea of eating popcorn with milk? Who does that? Anyway, strange and unusual as it might sound, this was a real thing during the Great Depression era, and it was a regular dinner option. Popcorn was one of the very few affordable foods during this time, so it's no surprise that it became a staple in many homes. You can imagine the recipes for this dish. It was simply popcorn with milk poured over it. It wasn't accompanied by a soft drink the way you do in cinemas, nor was it taken as a snack with melted butter alongside it. It was eaten as a main meal on its own. Although, unlike corned beef luncheon salad, popcorn with milk could double both as a breakfast option as well as a dinner option. And sometimes, to add extra sweetness, sugar was sprinkled on top of the milk-coated popcorn. Something similar in today's cuisines is our sugary breakfast cereals. Popcorn with milk provides both carbohydrates and protein, which are essential nutrients. More importantly, this dish keeps hunger at bay. Today, popcorn with milk no longer exists, but it's most certainly the easiest to recreate of all the foods on this list. Definitely easier than snapping turtle soup. Number 8. Snapping turtle soup. Snapping turtles are cold-blooded reptiles. During the Great Depression, from the late 20s to the early 30s, people had to rely on this animal as a source of protein. Typically, a snapping turtle weighs 10 to 36 pounds, and it was not easy to catch one. When approached, they hissed like cats, and they were even more dangerous than crabs, as they could bite off one's fingers effortlessly. But despite these risks, people attempted to catch them, particularly during spring when the turtles were on the move during mating season. Once a turtle was caught, it was immediately made into soup, which was like a vegetable soup, except instead of using beef or chicken, the turtle meat was the main protein. At first, the turtle meat was allowed to simmer in a pot with celery, onion, and carrots. After it was cooked until done, the meat was separated from the shell and added back into the soup. The fact that people had to eat turtles to survive probably gives you the ick as a modern consumer. But remember, it was inevitable back then, especially for people experiencing poverty who needed protein without having to spend in a financially tough era. The next dish is much more tolerable, if you still find that extreme. Number 7. Vinegar pie. Yes, vinegar pie, or should we say desperation pie as it is sometimes called. Vinegar pie is a simple but clever dish, something you can easily recreate, unlike snapping turtle soup. During the Great Depression era, lemons were too costly to be easily afforded by most people. Since lemons were a common ingredient in desserts, people began to look for a substitute and ended up with vinegar. The other ingredients, eggs, sugar, and flour, were relatively cheaper at this time, so they were all added alongside apple cider vinegar to make a surprisingly tasty pie with a custard-like texture and a sweet and tangy flavor, perfect for dessert. Yes, today you won't find it on any menu in any restaurant, and you won't find it on any family dinner table either, but it served its purpose during the Great Depression, and it's something you might want to try, as the ingredients and process are very simple, just like a garbage plate. Number 6. Garbage plate. In case you're mistaken, let's quickly clarify something before proceeding. Garbage plate wasn't actually made out of literal garbage. No, far from it. It was a dish whipped up from leftovers and ingredients available in the kitchen, which makes sense because during the Great Depression, it would be unwise to allow any food to go to waste. As a result, it's safe to say this is probably the most resourceful dish on the list so far. A typical garbage plate contained a big scoop of macaroni salad and a spoonful or two of baked beans. After that came fried potatoes piled high on the plate, and to top it all off, there might be a couple of fried hot dogs or fried bologna. The finishing touches included a large amount of mustard, chopped onions, ketchup, or even chili. Anything that was close by could make it into the bowl. The benefits of this dish are varied, as are the ingredients. It contains a lot of protein, carbohydrates, vitamins, and so on. It was just the perfect meal for hardworking laborers as it supplied lots of energy. Typically, a person was ready for another 4 to 6 hours of manual work after consuming a garbage plate. The garbage plate is practically non-existent, but it was a resourceful and life-saving dish during the Great Depression. On to the 5th dish on the list. Number 5. Onions stuffed with peanut butter. Onions were easy to grow during the Great Depression and could also be stored for a long period. Peanut butter, on the other hand, was very cheap, full of protein, and rampant in many households. The marriage of these two ingredients brought about the food, onions stuffed with peanut butter. It was actually simple to prepare. The first process was to hollow out the onion. The scooped out parts were used for other meals. Remember, this wasn't a period when people could waste food. After this, the peanut butter was mixed with breadcrumbs made from stale bread. It was mixed and then stuffed into the hollowed out onion. The entire thing was placed in an oven to roast for about an hour. And the onion became sweet and flavorful, while the peanut butter and bread mixture was crisp and crunchy. An onion stuffed with peanut butter may not have been as filling as a garbage plate, but it sure held the stomach for a while. Number 4. Dandelion green salad. Dandelion was a common weed that was incorporated into the cuisines of the Great Depression era. Most people discard it nowadays, but something like this just couldn't go to waste at the time. When food was still scarce during the early spring, a miracle came in the form of dandelions. They were among the first plants to appear, and it didn't take long for people to realize that the tender leaves of the dandelion could be harvested and turned into a nutritious salad. The leaves were rich in vitamins and minerals, and since other vegetables were hard to come by, they became a regular on many dinner plates. To make it, the dandelion leaves were washed and combined with hard-boiled eggs and bacon bits. The dressing usually consisted of leftover bacon grease mixed with vinegar for flavor. A little salt and pepper were used to top it off. It was a creative dish, and it bailed out the people from their yearning for salad before other vegetables bloomed. Number 3. Coffee soup. Coffee soup was particularly popular among the Amish, who were notorious for being frugal and for living plainly. When the Depression hit in full force, even the simplest ingredients were hard to come by, so they had to substitute their breakfast option with coffee soup. Coffee soup was easy to prepare. Pieces of dry or hard bread, usually leftover bread, were placed at the bottom of a bowl. Then, freshly brewed coffee was poured over it to soak thoroughly. For extra flavor, some people might add sugar, cream, or both. On the surface, this looks like a simple meal, and it is, or was rather, but it was a good energy source for people into hard labor. Bread and sugar provided the carbohydrates, and the hot coffee provided a much-needed warmth. It was a really clever way to stretch resources at the time. Although, with the Depression era long behind us, the dish has faded from existence. Well, except if you want to create it for your next breakfast. Now, number 2. Number 2. Hoover stew. Hoover stew was a dish named after President Herbert Hoover, the leader of the United States during the Great Depression. The dish was served in soup kitchens, and it was a particularly filling meal, even more filling than the thin broths that soup kitchens were mostly known for. The recipe was simple and cheap, and it made its way onto the plates of many families. It consists of noodles, either macaroni or spaghetti, boiled and combined with sliced hot dogs, canned stewed tomatoes, corn, or peas, including the liquid from the cans. The stew was boiled and then simmered until the pasta was fully cooked. The interesting thing was that the stew used cheap ingredients that could be stretched to feed a lot of people, and even more than once. And the recipe wasn't rigid. One could substitute the vegetables with whatever canned goods were available. It was really good food, like prune pudding, that served the people in an especially tough time. Number 1. Prune pudding. Many may not know what prune pudding is today, but it was a common treat during the Great Depression. Prunes, which are basically dried plums, were popular then because many could afford them. They had a longer shelf life, and they also provided essential nutrients. Prunes were cooked until soft, then they were mashed into a thick, sweet paste. The last paste was combined with sugar, flour, and eggs, and finally set in the oven to bake. Prune had natural sweetness, and sometimes some people added cinnamon or nutmeg for additional sweetness. It was a regular in many homes during this period. All these foods, be it Hoover stew, dandelion greens, or snapping turtles, were necessities. They came out of the need for cheaper, healthier, and more affordable food in an era that was cruel and unsmiling in many respects. They may have faded into oblivion, but they served the people well during this time when they were needed the most. What do you think of these foods? Is there anyone you would like to make based on the recipes provided? Let us know in the comments below. Also, don't forget to watch more videos on vintage foods like this.